Word Balloon, celebrating 16 years of excellence for you. Welcome back, everybody. Time again for another Word Balloon Live, the pop culture conversation show. We're not really talking comics. We might later, if Kurt is interested. John Suntress here, and happy to welcome Kurt Matilla back. You might remember over the summer, I had Kurt on to talk about his excellent documentary for Disney Plus called Stuntman, all about a great Hollywood stuntman whose name escapes me. Kurt, first of all, welcome, Kurt.
Oh, thanks for having me back, John. Much appreciate being here.
And shame on me, I didn't think to put up the title card of Stuntman. I'll find it as we're talking because I do want to direct people back to that wonderful film that you made. What's the name of the stuntman that remade the Snake River Canyon run and did it successfully? The Evel Knievel stunt.
That would be stuntman Eddie Braun.
Eddie Braun, of course.
Eddie Braun.
Great movie, tremendous. Wonderful, uplifting story about Eddie's career and slowly how he was able to successfully do Evel Knievel's infamous Snake River run. And now you're back, and we briefly talked about this on the last conversation, that you were in the midst of finishing a amazing documentary with Oliver Stone about re-examining all the details of the Kennedy assassination and the conspiracy theories. We have more information now. It's running on Showtime. JFK Through the Looking Glass, correct?
JFK Revisited Through the Looking Glass. And yeah, it's currently on Showtime, but it will be in February on like iTunes and, Amazon, all that kind of stuff. So it's got this sort of limited run. And so I apologize to listeners if it's hard to watch on Showtime because you got to get like the free week trial, whatever. But in February, you'll be able to get it anywhere.
Okay. Wow, my buddy Wayne. Kurt, shame on me. Are you still doing your podcast? Tell me about your podcast, Kurt.
Oh, I had a podcast called The Big Pull. Then I started with a show favorite, Julie Benson. And then we did another version with my friends, Giancarlo Volpe and his wife. Giancarlo's a big animation showrunner. He did he was on Clone Wars for a while, and then he show ran the Green Lantern animated series for a while. And we did that for a bit. But as you know, it's a full-time job, the podcasting. Like, you gotta record every night. And, when you don't have a consistent spot to do it, I had to set up all the microphones. I was like Glenn, what's his name from Get Back? I was like George Martin, setting up all the microphones, and then we record for an hour and a half. And then I have to break everything back down again. I was just like, I gotta I got a job to do.
I
So
hear you, man. Oh, I
yeah,
so hear you. And,
yeah,
and
yeah.
the big poll.
Yeah, it's we stopped after a while because again we didn't have a consistent recording place, and then I just couldn't figure out how to upload podcasts anymore because they changed all the settings stuff. But we might go back. We might
Okay.
bring the big poll back at some point. But we did have some fans in Chicago, and we would always run into people at Comic-Con, as you always do. We're like, hey, I listen to your show, and you're like, you do? Oh my goodness, thank you very much. So yeah.
That's awesome. Wayne is actually in Ottawa, in Canada.
Oh my goodness.
So
Hey,
yeah,
Wayne.
he made it to. We were just talking before the show started about C2E2. He's a big art collector. Made it to San Diego, Emerald City, and Chicago. Got his ass back to Canada just before Canada relocked down travel again because of Omicron.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm glad he's home and he's safe and he's tested and everything's going great for Wayne. I'm very happy about that. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me. He's a big podcast listener, so that's cool, man. He's aware of your shit. That's awesome. That's great, man. See, I just know you from your film stuff.
That's all right. We
Julie
didn't
was-
penetrate the marketplace the way Word Balloon did, but we did get a few listeners.
No, that's awesome, man. I got to hear it. That's why, and I hope you do get back to it if you can make it feasible and everything. But here, let's get back to the subject at hand because, and we'll get into the nitty gritty when we get to a portion of the documentary that sadly I have some knowledge on because I actually participated on a television show about conspiracies, and they had asked me about, or well, I had suggested the Kennedy conspiracy just because knowing that, for instance, Jack Ruby. Do I have my Jack Ruby picture? No, I'm gonna have to get it in a second. But Jack Ruby, the man who shot Lee Harvey Oswald, was, of course, a Chicago guy.
Yep.
Before he was a Dallas guy.
Yes.
And there's always been kind of a suspicion that maybe the mob was involved, and Sam Giancana was running the mob during the Kennedy. Helped him get the votes, of course, in 1960. And a lot of gravestones were voting for Kennedy against Nixon back in back in 60. It's sad but true. That's Chicago politics for you. But so and then I discovered this other wrinkle to the Kennedy conspiracy. But that's here. There's of course sadly the classic shot from Dallas before everything went to shit. Man, I'll tell you, I was born in December of '64. So I was born a year after Kennedy had passed.
Yeah.
And, my parents were massive fans. We had the Memorial album. I remember seeing it and listening to it, not really understanding as a kid because it mostly was just some of his great speeches and things like that. But yeah, man, it's cool. How did you get involved? I mean, we know Oliver Stone's incredible fascination, some would say obsession about this, but I think rightfully so. It's a mystery that I would like to see solved in our lifetimes and everything. And obviously Oliver has, spent a lot of time and resources to get to the bottom of this. But tell me how you got involved with the project.
Sure. I got involved with JFK, the Revisited film. My other producer on Stuntman, this guy, Rob Wilson, he, along with Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson and Julie the Benson sister Benson, we all worked on Stuntman. And by the way, I should mention before I forget, before I came on Word Balloon, we had a Rotten Tomatoes score of 88, an audience score of 87. And after the Word Balloon appearance, talking about Stuntman, we're now at 100% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 91% audience score.
Oh,
I don't know if there's a connection, but the Word Balloon bump, it's just, there's no conspiracy. These are facts, John. Before Word Balloon, it was these numbers. After Word Balloon, it was these numbers. So I was really thrilled about that.
Dude, if I had anything to do with that, that's lovely. And you're very
I think
sweet
it was all you.
that way.
Yeah. I directed and produced that film, and Rob Wilson, our producer, had been working with Oliver for a while on this JFK Revisited film. And during the pandemic, he said, "Hey, would you want to work on this with us?" Either I came on as a co-producer and an editor, but I'll be honest with you, I love the 1991 film. I saw it in high school. It was one of my favorite movies. And when I realized, oh, they got Robert Richardson back to shoot all the interviews, Academy Award winning cinematographer. Donald Sutherland's back to narrate. He's sort of reprising his role of X. John Williams said, "Here's the score. You can use some of it for the end credits." And Oliver's directing. I felt a little bit like Billy Preston, kind of walking into this sort of the band back together. Like, you sure you want me to play keyboards here, fellas? Because it's a little intimidating. But let's get started. So yeah, I got involved. It was about a little over a year ago. I got all the footage and. Part of me, getting involved is I sort of wrote out an outline that I had to pitch to Oliver Stone of sort of how I would approach the film, because there's a lot of information. We should start with the fact that the sort of premise of this movie is that the 1991 film, for those who don't know, was such a cultural phenomenon when it came out that it got a lot of Americans riled up, wanting to know what the heck happened. Something doesn't add up. And for the first time, a Hollywood movie got an act of Congress signed. A bill gets signed into law called the Records Collection, American Records Collection. And they formed a Records Review Board panel. And this panel was given a budget and 5 years to declassify as many things as possible, many documents as possible. And so all that happened in between 1991 and I believe 1998. They think they started 92, 98. And so this film is all about, here's what we've learned in that mass declassification. Because there's been a few books, there's a lot of, people have gone and done their own investigations, but no one's sort of taken all this information that we've learned and kind of present in this fashion. So my job was to sort of look at it. I got into Columbo because of you and your show. And I kind of thought like, what's the true crime angle on this? I mean, this is the ultimate true crime story. So yes. How do we want to present this information? How do we want people to understand the sort of, going back to the scene of the crime, figuring out motive, figuring out, all these kinds of things. And so when I presented that sort of outline, Oliver Stone was like, all right, let's see what you got, kid. And again, go ahead, Billy, play some keyboards. Let's see how you do in the get back sessions, So it was really intimidating at first, but we settled in and it all got done. So that's how I got involved.
Okay. And again, you're selling yourself short. I had no idea. Fragaboom points out that your work on Minority Report is essential. I didn't know you worked on Minority Report. Shame on me.
Fragaboom, good to see you, buddy. That man's a extremely good comic artist, as you know, but his storyboards were impeccable.
I'm assuming it's Dan Fraga, right?
Yeah. Well, I didn't want to give away his name because
I'll give away his name. That's right.
Dan,
I'm glad you're watching. That's very nice, man.
Trying to hide behind it. Yes, I worked on Minority Report. I don't know if you remember the movie, but of
course,
I created all the murder sequences that came out of the precog's head, the sort of those dream moments. And then I was part of the team to help sort of figure out how Tom Cruise analyzes all those things. So
that's amazing.
There's a special feature on the DVD with like a young version of me without my beard, just kind of like, this is why we did the thing and that. Like, I don't remember making a complete thought in English on this thing, but whoever put that together, that special feature, it was great. So
that's awesome, man. See, that's why I stuck to radio for all those years. I didn't want early footage of me to get. Yeah. Anyway.
You're wise. Yeah. No, they were like, oh, Spielberg said he wants to do a special feature. He goes, okay, great. I thought I was gonna do like a voiceover commentary, and they're like, hair and makeup's down the hall, sir, and I'm glad you didn't wear anything white. I was like, what's going on here? I don't like this at one bit.
That's awesome, man. No, I had no idea. All right, we'll talk about Spielberg later because that's amazing. Yeah. But back to the movie, and really, Richard Hamilton has a great question. And you're right, because initially, a lot of the information wasn't supposed to even be declassified until another 8 years from now, 2029. They really wanted to make sure everyone would be long dead before that could be incriminated, where any light of information might possibly come up. Yeah. And as Richard Hamilton asks, the government just declassified another 1,500 pages of material about the assassination. How far into it are you? So I don't know if any of that, I don't know when, as Richard points out, this new information came out, if it was since you guys finished making the movie now.
Yeah, there's a chunk of since the Assassination Records Review Board went into business in the 90s, declassifying the stuff. They had a time limit, so they got as much as they could get declassified as possible. They asked for renewal from Congress when the clock was up, and they were like, "Nah, sorry." They also, as you learn in the movie, did not get a lot of cooperation with the CIA, with the Secret Service. A lot of people weren't helping. But to Richard's point, it was also a great comic writer. There was still a bunch of stuff left over. And they set a deadline a few years ago, and Trump was actually supposed to release all this stuff, and he tweeted all about it, and then went, really interesting stuff in here, and then decided not to release it. And then Biden was supposed to release this last little batch, and then he didn't. So I believe what happens, they kind of trickled out a little bit more, but there's still a chunk of stuff not fully released yet, which, as you pointed out, like, who are they covering for? Like, like the whole claim is like, oh, we don't want to jeopardize people who are in the field. It's like, well, chances are they're not working anymore. So, so it's weird. But the one more thing about the origins of it is Oliver Stone in 2013, when it was the 50th anniversary of the assassination, all the news coverage was, oh, it's a sad thing that Lee Harvey Oswald acted alone. And it's like, he was like, you're still perpetuating the fucking Warren Commission thing 50 years later? Like, that's crazy. So today's news media is, all the major networks were still, going with the company line of what was done, said back in 64. So that kind of made him go like, oh man, we got to make a movie about this kind of thing. So that was sort of the spark that kind of led to to this documentary.
Wow. I know, man. And it's really, I don't know what to say, because again, I enjoyed the JFK movie. I also know that Oliver made a very serious point of explaining, because he really did. He really had every conspiracy theory covered in the film. There's some things that are that are not in the new Showtime, and right now Showtime, but eventual documentary. Here, I got the nice little card here. Yeah. For the movie and stuff. Was it in cinemas? Did it make it, Kurt, before it made it to Showtime?
Well, it premiered at Cannes, and I was invited, but I didn't want to go because I don't want to miss my first word balloon appearance over the summer. So I had to make sure that I was in town for that. Yeah, I think there's going to be a theatrical run in Europe, and I think there may be one in the States. I'm not sure. I should have got this information beforehand, but yeah, it definitely ran in a lot of. I think it was at the Venice Film Festival and that whole thing. So yeah.
No, and obviously with COVID too. I mean, movies are struggling in theaters. I'm glad that Showtime stepped up and grabbed the movie, and like you say, it's gonna starting in February. It'll be available to rent and stream on other platforms. So that's terrific. You guys go step by step. You start with the magic bullet. You talk about the rifle that Oswald supposedly used, the palm print, all these various things. You go through the autopsy and how it was performed, and the forensic medicine, and the lack of experience that the official Washington people had to do the forensic evidence. Why wasn't the Dallas forensic people allowed to do it, as Texas law would suggest they should have? Mm-hmm. Great stuff as far as all that goes. And I can't deny the interesting wrinkle that happens around the third act of the movie, where not only the theories about Dallas, but prior to Dallas, there were two other incidents that theorists believe were two other attempts to shoot Kennedy before Dallas, one in Chicago, one in Tampa Bay, or in Tampa, Florida. And years ago, about 6 years ago, I was approached to do a TV show it always sounds like it's bullshit because it never ran in the United States. It was made for the History Channel. It did end up running in Canada, and it ran in Germany.
Yes.
And it was called The Unexplained. Jimmy Church, another great podcaster, was the host of the show,
Mm-hmm.
and I had known the producers because I was involved with them doing the show called Prophets of Science Fiction. Now they were making this show. This is not to be confused with William Shatner's Unexplained that currently is running.
Yeah.
But they wanted, I'm like, yeah, let's talk about Kennedy. And I thought about Sam Giancana and the Jack Ruby connection. And they're like, well, do you know about Plan A? And I said, I have no idea what you're talking about. They're like, Plan A was going to be an attempted Kennedy in Chicago. A week or so later, there was Plan B in Tampa. And essentially, they knew Kennedy was going to be in these two cities. And they talked about potentially, supposedly the conspiracy theory is that there was going to be an attempt on Kennedy's life in these two places. In Chicago, the Secret Service caught wind of it about, first of all, 4 Cubans that were supposedly coming to Chicago. They were staying at one of these hotels that was along Kennedy's route. One of them, and this is the information I got from my show,
right,
that one of the hotel people, when cleaning out this room, found 4 rifles, tons of ammunition, and a map of Kennedy's motorcade, because it was big news. Hey, the president's coming to town. If you want to see him, he's landing at O'Hare. He was coming in to watch an Army-Navy football game at Soldier Field, where the Bears play. And this is, if you want to see him, this is the route. So obviously they thought there was something suspicious going on. And so the call went to the Secret Service about these Cubans. The Secret Service kind of botched it. They were surveilling these 4 people. They only managed to, 2 of them got away, but they were able to grab 2 of them and detain them. Also, there was this guy, and I get a picture of him, and that's Thomas Valley.
Oh, yeah.
Now, Thomas Valley is very similar, as you guys point out in the documentary, to Lee Harvey Oswald. Now, do you want to tell people about Thomas Valley?
Yeah, the chilling part of it was, like you mentioned, there was almost like this weird, assassination playbook. And this guy was from New York, and he was moved to Chicago. He was given a job in essentially a 6, 7, 8-story building, much like the book depository.
That's
and
right.
When you compared his background to Lee Harvey Oswald, they were both in the military. They both worked in this weird CIA base in Japan. They're both sort of dissidents. And there was just all these odd, it was almost like they were casting the patsy for what the Chicago plot would be. And this guy would obviously fit that bill. And as you pointed out, the similar motorcade was very much close to Dallas. They had this tall building, and this guy was going to be groomed potentially to be who Oswald ultimately was in Dallas. But the guy who sort of raised the flag, you met.
That's right, Abraham Bolden. Well, actually, Abraham Bolden, for everyone watching and listening, was a Secret Service man. He was the first Black Secret Service agent. Kennedy had met him after the election, and was working out of the Illinois Secret Service office. And Kennedy's like, do you know of any other Black Secret Service agents? He's like, no, I really don't. And he goes, well, why don't you come to Washington and work with us there? He did for a while, was subjected to a lot of racial shit from other Secret Service guys, and said, I'm not digging this, I'm leaving. So he went back to Chicago. The thing with the Cubans kind of stuck in his head. The thing with Valley was also, by the way, a John Birch Society guy. And for modern people who don't know what the John Birch Society was, it was an ultra conservative group. You might want to compare them to the QAnon people of today in terms of the weird political beliefs and weird conspiracies. And in fact, if you go back to the JFK movie, Frank Whaley, the actor, played Oswald. And there's a great scene where supposedly he's in a diner and he's like, yeah, somebody ought to put a bullet in that Kennedy's head. And apparently Valley was overheard saying the same kind of stuff. This is what my research.
Yeah, it was the same kind of thing. Yeah. That was Gary Oldman that played him, by the way.
Well, in the movie, you're right. Oldman played Oswald, but I think Whaley might have played someone that they thought was Oswald, or
right, like an associate or something. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I just remember this Whaley, but yeah, shame on me. You're right. Of course, Oldman was the proper representation of Oswald in the film. So, and to finish the valet story specifically, he was stopped that Saturday. Kennedy was coming for a college football game on Saturday against Army and Navy. He was stopped. When they pulled him over, he had an air rifle and he had tons of ammunition. And they're like, "Where are you going?" And it's like, "Oh, I'm going to work." Well, the print shop, as you described, Kurt, was closed that day. And it's like, yeah, that doesn't jive. So they were able to grab him. Supposedly the word got back to Washington. Hey, it's too hot here in Chicago. Cancel Kennedy's trip. Also that same day, the South Vietnamese president was assassinated.
Yeah.
And again, this is 1963. And so Pierre Salinger, the press officer, is like, Mr. Kennedy has to deal with the South Vietnamese assassination. He's not going to Chicago. That trip is canceled. I don't remember the specifics of why the Tampa trip was canceled. I will refer people to the movie. I'm just telling you my representation. So then we got Mr. Bolden. After Dallas, Mr. Bolden kind of connected all the dots and is like, wait a minute. This weird shit happened in Chicago. It happened in our office. The Secret Service took care of the two Cubans they were able to detain and Valley. And he's like, there's got to be a connection. Something weird's going on. And he reported it to his supervisors. You would think that would be the right thing to do. But as you guys point out in the movie, it was the wrong thing to do because apparently several things happened. First of all the evidence of these Chicago assassination attempts were destroyed. And he went to his superiors and they're like, basically gave him the business. Finally, he kept persisting and like a year or two later was arrested on this weird counterfeit thing. Mr. Bolden was arrested, supposedly passing off phony $5 bills in suburban Chicago. Got locked up. I got to interview Mr. Bolden, and Mr. Bolden told us, and he wrote a book as well about his experiences on all this. Not only was he put in prison, but he was put in a psycho ward. He said he was injected with psychotropics to mess with his brain. And he remembered clearly before one injection, somebody telling him, you ain't going to remember shit about yourself, let alone what happened to Kennedy.
Yeah.
Now, that's what Mr. Bolden said to me in my interview with him.
That's chilling.
Yeah. So, thankfully, Mr. Bolden survived the ordeal. He got out of jail eventually. He ended up in the auto industry and had a nice life and a comfortable life, thankfully, afterwards. But, tons of red flags of what the fuck happened.
Yeah.
And so that's, I know when you and I talked before, it was like, wow, let me tell you what I know. And let me tell you who I talked to.
Yeah, we'll compare notes here. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's one of many things. And I think, for those who are interested in the movie, like I said, Congress did pass this thing, the JFK Records Collection Act. I couldn't remember it earlier because I was excited about being on. And the Assassination Records Review Board is the people that came together. But everything in this film, is stuff that's from documents. Like it's all document. There isn't sort of conspiracy theories in this. And also conspiracy theory it's such a strange term now. Like it's not fun anymore. Like once January 6th, it's like, ooh, in a lot of ways, this was sort of the big bang of conspiracy theories, which, it gets very dangerous during these rabbit holes, but we were really, Oliver Stone and all the guys, like they're really specific about everything we're putting in this. This is a document that get declassified. So in the example of this, like, no, here's proof that this valet guy was arrested. They found 4 Cubans. They had guns. This doesn't make sense. Abraham Bolden tried to report it to the Secret Service in Dallas to say, hey, just so you guys heads up. And then all the stuff that happened to him that you're talking about subsequent was when the assassination did happen in Dallas. And he's like, this is like almost exactly what would have happened in Chicago if, we didn't find those Cubans with the assassination rifles and they canceled the thing. So he was just like trying to like, hey guys, like this, there's, like you said, there's a connection here. And then once that happened, he got stonewalled in silence, which is, creepy. And I guess, one of the other things too to take away from the movie, Oliver was on a podcast called Useful Idiots with Matt Tiabi. He's a great journalist.
Oh, I love Matt Tiabi. He's Rolling Stone, everybody. An excellent guy who has a great investigative journalist who's gotten behind the Wall Street crash of 2008 and
Yeah.
All the other various like shitty things. I mean, I'm a big fan of his writing and whenever he is on shows. And you're right, he's got an excellent podcast. Continue.
Yeah, he and Glenn Greenwald were really supportive of the movie, and their takeaway, which I think was a really nice to articulate, like this is not a movie about like it was this guy. It's more about we want to convince you that the official report was ridiculous, and I think the movie does a good job doing that, where it just says, okay, maybe we're not giving you the smoking gun, but what we hope we're giving you is enough evidence to look at and go, this official report is bullshit. And as many people have attested who have gone through this stuff, if Oswald had lived and they actually had a trial with the evidence that they had, it would have been thrown out. Like without a doubt. There was too much. There was no chain of custody with the bullets that were pulled out of Kennedy's body. There were so many sloppy, botched things that, again, if a court of law was to put this man on trial, they would have been like, sorry, we wasted your time, sir. But instead it was, a bunch of wise old men and politicians and the ex-head of the CIA that Kennedy fired was also part of this Warren Commission investigation.
There he is.
So it's kind of like, right there, that's essentially like if Batman was killed and the Joker was like, oh, let me join in or help figure out who did this. Well, there's some Smilex in his system. Oh, we better get to the bottom of this. It was really weird because they were enemies. And so it's just odd that he's the guy who boldly joined up to help, with the investigation. So again, this is mainly about debunking the official report. Like the official report makes no sense if you look at all this stuff. There's evidence of so much tampering in the official report, like Gerald Ford, who was on the Warren Commission, is just doctoring stuff left and right, willy-nilly, changing details just to do it.
Alan Specter, too, the Philadelphia senator who has since passed as well. I mean, again, everybody's dead. Everybody's dead that you can incriminate. And really, Specter was one of the last. Am I saying his name right? Is it Alan Specter? Is it
Arlen
Specter? Excuse me.
Yeah.
I mean, he was kind of the last guy. It's crazy. Here's another wrinkle to Jack Ruby, who sadly, let me bring this here. Here he is shooting Lee Oswald. That's him in the black coat shooting. There's a great investigative reporter from Chicago. He's in his 90s now, still alive. John Drummond. His nickname was Bulldog Drummond. Great guy.
Yeah.
Really, really focused on the mob and came to Chicago in the mid-'60s. And when I was approached to do that TV show, I'm like, maybe John Drummond has some information.
Oh, good.
It's about 6 years ago. So I asked him about Ruby, and I don't know what your guys' research showed, but I'm like, okay, like, help me out on this because, he wanted to testify to the Warren Commission and as portrayed in the JFK original movie was denied. But I'm like, what do you think? Did Ruby... I'm like, was Ruby kind of, there to silence Oswald? He claims, because Mr. Drummond told me, he's like, I don't believe that. He goes, I do believe that Ruby acted impulsively. I'm like, well, then what was he doing carrying a gun that morning of that weekend? And why was he in the police office and stuff? And he goes, well, he ran a strip joint in Dallas. A lot of the cops would go to the strip joint. So he kind of was, oh, it's Jack. Hey, how you doing, Jack? Whatever. But he said that morning he was wiring $1,000 to one of his strippers who was in another city. I don't remember which city, but she needed money. So he had to go to the Western Union office. And apparently back then, wherever the Western Union office was in Dallas, it was in a dicey neighborhood.
Yeah.
So he was carrying $1,000 in cash to wire. You do that, they write the check and then they send it off in Western Union via telegram. And he's like, he was walking around with $1,000 in his pocket, so he wanted to protect himself in case he got rolled, got mugged or something. This is his claim.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I guess, but Mr. Drummond believed it. I also know other great journalists believed no, Oswald acted alone. I mean, I remember Peter Jennings, the great ABC analyst, did a very good Kennedy documentary. He also believes the lone gunman Oswald theory and everything. It's very, very weird. Again, because I think you guys do successfully point out these inconsistencies, these testimonies for people that would debunk Oswald's timing to be there and be involved with the shot, that they disappeared or were recanted in the autopsy. Professional pathologists and forensic scientists were told to change their testimony by the commission. No, there's a lot of weird, flimsy shit. I mean, good Lord. Have you ever watched, or actually, I've never seen it, but I heard it when Jim Garrison, the New Orleans district attorney that Kevin Costner plays in the JFK film, Jim Garrison was on the Tonight Show during the time frame of the JFK movie when Clay Shaw, the CIA man that is operating in New Orleans under an assumed name, actually is proven to be a CIA op in later years. But Garrison is making his case to Johnny Carson on the Tonight Show. And Johnny's just like, Jim, I don't believe it. I don't know here, you know. And I mean, you know, in that great Johnny voice.
Yeah, yeah.
And it's this amazing half hour. I mean, it's long. It was like, all right, and now we got Zsa Zsa Gabor. Well, we'll be back after this.
And now Zsa Zsa. Wow.
Have you ever heard this audio?
No, I haven't, but I did see that sort of history of late night series about all the sort of the birth of late night, all that stuff, which was actually I didn't realize Jim Garrison but that is interesting because Tommy Lee Jones plays Clay Shaw in the 1991 movie, and at the climax of that film, you know, Garrison loses his case. Like they jury says this guy is not a CIA operative, leave him alone. And like one of the first things that gets debunked when they start declassifying things is like, not only was Clay Shaw a CIA operative, he was running stuff in New Orleans. So like, and it's all like his name, and like it's all like they unredacted the stuff. And so like you're like, if that's like one of the first things to come out, like keep it going, you know. But yeah, you mentioned this forensics and all that kind of stuff, and you know, when you really look at the nitty gritty and you look at this from like a crime scene investigation, that none of these things add up. Like, you know, we talk about, you know, I never understood the sort of origins of the magic bullet. And the magic bullet, as Arlen Specter coined it, came about because the FBI planted 3 spent shells in the 6th floor depository, probably just to kind of quickly, you know, get this thing going. Because, you know, FBI did that a lot. You know, we all read the James Ellroy books about cricket cops, whatever. But the problem is, they then had to show that 3 bullets did all the stuff, because if they said there was a 4th, it would have been a conspiracy. And unfortunately,
would have been a second shooter. And
there was this dopey guy standing under this bridge watching it, and he got hit by a ricochet. So like he's like, so I almost got hit by one of them bullets. So all right, there's one down. There's too many witnesses to cover this guy up. So now we have 2 bullets left to explain all this damage. And that's how the magic bullet thing came about. And it's just like that alone. It's like, guys, come on, this doesn't make any sense. And as you know, as we also pointed out that you mentioned too, that what got me the most was we all watch true crime movies, and the greatest, most important part of any mystery is the autopsy. You know, there's always the autopsy scene where the coroner comes in, the detective, and they start looking at all the stuff. And that's what tells the story. We can figure out, you know, when the bullets came out and how many shooters there were. And, you know, did the victim die of this and this? So we would imagine our president died. That autopsy should have been the most important, crucial thing in the nation's history. So what happened is all the top forensic guys were all packed and ready to go. None of them got called. Instead, they got 2 Navy guys who never did gunshot wound autopsies before. Like, this is, as Cyril Wecht, one of the living sort of witnesses of all this stuff, who is a forensic pathologist, said, just like why? That makes no sense, guys. And it just gets sadder and sadder when you start looking through these things, that like, my God, just the sheer sloppiness that they were just throwing this thing together. The one thing that I kind of thought, trying to give benefit to the doubt of like, why was this such a botched thing? And what's not in this version, but in the 4-hour version, is you
Oh,
know,
wow.
the 4-hour version will get released in February as well too. You know, I think Johnson wanted very quickly to let people know this was not the Russians, because
Oh,
if we thought it was the Russians, it's nuclear war. Like,
World War
that's it.
III. Absolutely.
Khrushchev just killed our
Absolutely.
president. Sorry, guys, launch the nukes. Dr. Strangelove, here we go. So I think there was definite this like quick thing to like, it was this guy, it was Oswald, he was affiliated with the Cubans, just make it happen, take the known facts of the case and create this narrative so we don't have nuclear war, you know? So I can understand the rush for this kind of thing, again, for the site, for the bigger picture. But with that, you know, okay, great. It's not the Russians. Let's take a breath and let's see if what really happened. And again, it just was just compounded nonsense of evidence.
Absolutely, man. Well, and another thing too, the Zapruder film.
Yeah.
This Anthony, I believe Anthony Zapruder is his first name. He was just casually shooting because he was in Dallas, and hey, there's the president, and I got a great chance of getting 8mm shots of the president waving to everybody. Ends up actually getting the assassination, and for years that was locked up. Again, being an old man, I remember in the early 70s when Geraldo, of all people, Al Capone's vaults, this was the story that made Geraldo Rivera back in the early 70s. And it was a special late night ABC's thing of, we're finally showing you the Zapruder film. And I remember me and my older stepbrother, 7 years older than me, I was 73. I was like 9 or 10. Perfect age to watch this stuff. And my older brother, we're watching it together. And as shown in the documentary, Kennedy grabs his throat from the first shot, and then you see very graphically the back of his head blow out.
Yeah.
And again, talking about the autopsy and the inconsistencies of not only the autopsy report, but photographs of Kennedy's brain on the table in the autopsy before, you know, after, not before. But I mean, you know, just these thoughts that, no, supposedly the bullets all came from the back. That would explain why it was only Oswald shooting him from the back. No, again, Kennedy gets shot in the throat, goes like this. And also the fact that the bullets that blow out part of his brain, I mean, it's like a comet. I mean, you literally see the back of his head blow off and everything. And then poor Jackie, you know, just instinctively goes to scoop up the brain. I mean, my God. And can you imagine the horror of having your husband's part of his brain in your hands and handing it to the authorities to get to the bottom of this, and then for them to fuck it up? I mean, my God, it's just so sick. And again, it's like, come on. It was not, these shots did not happen from the back. And also the magic bullet, not only killing Kennedy, but injuring Governor John Connally, who was sitting in front of Kennedy. I mean, there he is in the shot. I got the
up in the front,
Connally literally right in front of Kennedy, right there. There's poor Jackie in the classic suit that she was wearing and stuff. Ugh. But yeah, man, it's I mean, even Connally is like, I don't think so. Even back then. And I mean, you know, one of the victims of the shooting and stuff. And like you said, the bystander that gets caught by the ricochet and stuff. Too many weird things. And the lone gunman, I can appreciate, as you say, not only from the Russians, but also just a combination in terms of, we got the guy. Everything's fine. Back to normal.
Don't worry about it. Let's just steamroll it. Yeah. No, I can't believe you saw that Geraldo special, because that was something else that I was shocked at, because I just assumed that was just part of the consciousness of America. Like this, that we all know there's a Zapruder film, whatever, but for 12 years, no one saw that. And it was sort of the equivalent of like the security cam footage finally surfacing of what really happened on a particular event. So when you don't have the photographic evidence, and when you don't have the sort of footage, you know, you can convince a country that this is what happened, because there was no witnesses. They didn't see it. So for 12 years, we're like, okay, I guess that's what happened. And then leaked on that special, you finally see the proverbial security cam footage, and you're like, are you kidding me? And so that prompted yet another investigation, the assassination, the House Select Committee of Assassinations.
Right.
And they reinvestigated, they re-interviewed witnesses, and they're the ones that got a lot more information. But when they kind of collated all together, like, oh, fuck, we're classifying this into the year 2029. And it's that material that also got released through the Assassination Records Review Board in the 90s, a lot of that stuff from the 70s. So yeah, it's again, there's been like 2 or 3 major investigations into this, and both times it's like, this doesn't make sense. So it's like, how many more times does this have to be investigated before we finally go, this isn't right? This something doesn't add up. I mean,
I'm really interested to see the 4-hour version, because I'm curious. Here's something that I didn't see in the film, and maybe I blinked and missed it. But as you say, first of all, Whoopi Goldberg does an excellent job narrating a good portion of the film. But also, when we get to the point of who did it, who was behind it and stuff, Donald Sutherland switches as the narrator. And as we know, Donald Sutherland plays X in JFK. X was represented by a couple people, but mostly, if I remember correctly, Fletcher Prouty. And here's a picture of Mr. Prouty.
Yeah.
I know that and I know that Oliver Stone explained subsequently after the movie came out who X was. It was this Colonel Prouty. Yeah. Essentially, this amazing scene didn't happen with Jim Garrison. It was supposedly, I believe, Mr. Prouty talking to Oliver Stone and giving him the details of, this is how the coup happened. These are the stories that were planted around the world in a speed that was unlikely prior to today's electronic media and immediacy that we have in the digital age. In the film, Sutherland's X character, who's in the military, is reading about the assassination like hours after it happened, and he's like, "There's no way in hell that a newspaper would have this story already with details of Oswald as the killer." So what was Prouty left out of this version of the story, or do you guys have it in the 4-hour version where you talk about Fletcher Prouty?
No, I don't. He's not mentioned in this. And again, it's like, Oliver's been obsessed with this and been working on this for so long, and they've been gathering on this. There's just trying to distill it down to 2 hours was a task, and so some stuff just didn't make it in there. There is a lot of it's not cool. Sorry. There's a lot more forensic evidence that is in the 4-hour version that I was just like, I feel like we made the point here, guys. I think we've convinced people that there's something weird at this crime scene. We may not need all this other stuff, but independent of a movie, just some of these things are out. I'll give you an example. They did their homework in the sort of investigation when they said, okay, if he was shot from behind, they took 8 human skulls and they filled them with the equivalent sort of brain matter. And this is all stuff that could declassify. And they filmed all these skulls getting shot from the trajectory and the angle that Oswald's bullet allegedly hit from behind.
Yes.
All of those skulls blew out in the front. So, like, consistently. So the physics say if he was shot like that, his face would have exploded. And that did not happen. He was perfectly intact from this part. So it's sort of like, okay, what do we do with this information? Here's a case in point that like this. And so that got buried. Another thing that got buried was these X-ray slides of his actual brain, where you saw bullet fragments that, if you got hit here, there was a lot of fragments here, and they sort of dissipate as you get further out. If he was hit from behind, there'd be a lot of fragments here, and they would dissipate towards the front. But all the X-rays show that there's all these fragments here, and they sort of dissipate as you go back. So it's sort of like, guys, what do you do with this information? Like, here's more evidence to support that he was not shot from the back. So it just gets really stranger and stranger. And again, it gets almost redundant to a point where it's like, okay, how much more do we need to see declassified that says he was not shot from the back, guys? It was clearly from the front. So
no question. No, I agree with you, man.
I don't want to turn Word Balloon to some weird conspiracy episode. Cause again, I just remind you, like, all this stuff is is factual. It's declassified. It's literally unredacted. Like, these are things that we learned. We found out that the bullet the chain of custody is inconsistent. Like there's no sort of proper documentation of where this thing came from and stuff. So all these things are all, right there for people to see, and not like, ooh, kind of stuff.
No, and listen, man, we do need to get to the bottom of this, just like, sadly, the fresher experience of January 6th last year.
Yeah.
You can't bury this shit. This is important.
Yeah.
And it isn't a conspiracy theory. These are factual things that happen that, in the case of the Kennedy assassination, literally changed the direction of our government. Kennedy did want to pull out of Vietnam. That is very clear. Johnson chose to escalate Vietnam. There was a lot of sadness and also a lot of wrong directions that the country went into because of Kennedy's assassination. He wasn't a saint. He absolutely had his own flaws. But I think when it comes to a lot of the big picture things, he was the right guy, and we were going in the right direction. And in fact, I love at the end of the film, it's not really a spoiler because, again, this is just common.
This is history.
Fact. Yeah, it is history. I mean, the way this man was beloved, and even to this day, how many Kennedy streets and statues and various examples of memorials that were created around the world and still exist. And it's like, no, this was a big deal. And again, as much as we needed a solution back in 1964 to explain it all, no, we need to know the truth. And also, again, it's these kind of things that cannot go uninvestigated.
Yeah.
And, it's odd timing. I assume that the re-examination of the Kennedy thing started before last January 6th.
Well, yeah, I mean, so Rob, my buddy, who's also the producer, he and Oliver have been working on this for a couple of years. When I got involved, day one for me was January 6th. I literally sat down to start working on this, and I'm like, oh, what's going on at the Capitol? And I'm already going we got to be careful about conspiracy theories because they're now dangerous. They'll, and then all of a sudden, as I'm working on this, day one, I'm working on this movie, they're storming the Capitol. And so that kind of inspired how we opened the movie, the documentary, because part of the other reason why I think Rob wanted me to work on this is because, we think we have a nerd sphere when it comes to comics and details. Like people who are really into the assassination have their own nerd sphere. And, I was the new guy. So I kind of had this fresh perspective. And what I observed, I was like, guys, we have so much fascinating revelations. I think we got to remind people what happened first before we go, and then here's what we were told. And now this is what we learned. And so, one of my pitches to Oliver was like, let's just take 8 minutes and take all the news footage from those 3 days and kind of create this sort of overture just to remind the audience, like, what a fucking terrible day that was. Like, it started like any other day, November 22nd, they interrupt the news. We don't know if he's alive or dead. And like, that was the birth of the 24-hour news cycle. Like you literally look at like ABC and they're like trying to like put the lights up. They had no idea how to sort of be live narrating this tragedy as it goes. And it's fascinating looking at this footage and all the first witnesses, the man on the street, they pull him in within minutes. They're all like, yeah, the bullets came from that hill. And it's like there it is. And like these were people who were there moments away when it's the freshest thing. The odd thing about Minority Report is, my obsession with that was I was really interested about how people witness crimes. And my sort of pitch to Spielberg was like, the reason why it needs to be 3 precogs is because everyone sees things differently. And it's always, but once it's fresh, like that's the best time to kind of get this information. So the precogs were like always witnessing things, fresh in their mind, even though it was happening in the future. But anyway, these guys were there moments after this thing. And they all were saying it came from, there's even footage of people running up towards the grassy knoll as if they were like forming a posse to find who's out there. So it's like, you can't deny these things. And so then I didn't know this, but obviously Oswald was shot on live television by Chicago's own Jack Ruby.
That's absolutely right.
But I didn't know that was during the funeral procession, like when people were coming to the Capitol to view the body. So here, everyone's trying to like process that the president has just been killed. They have this beautiful procession. We interrupt live to go to Dallas, and oh my God, the guy who's accused just got shot. Like, I can't imagine what that must have been looking at, trying to, cutting away from the funeral to get this moment. Like it's terrifying. So putting all that stuff in there, talking about how the Warren Commission was formed, all the stuff that all the sort of investigations that were happening. And then a year into it, they published, much like the Mueller report, like, here it is. Good luck, everybody. This is it. Good night, everybody. And it wasn't until 15 years later on the Geraldo Rivera special, they're like, hey, we got a little something here you guys should look at. And it's sort of I think the first, chip away at the report of the debunking of all this.
100% agree, man. Absolutely. My God. Like you say, that footage was just locked away for 12 years. And then when it finally came out, it's like, okay, everything they told us, we don't believe. And as you say, the congressional investigation of the mid-70s that happened, Mr. Bolden testified for that as well.
Yeah.
But again, it went nowhere or was classified. It's, again, it was kind of out of his hands, and he never got to the bottom of it. No, man, I think it's an incredible story. It's again, I know true crime is very much a very popular subject.
It's a doozy of a true crime, I'll tell you.
Yeah. And so, I mean, for people who really are coming to this with just the textbook knowledge of, John Kennedy was one of our presidents, was assassinated, and never really bothered to get into it, I think your guys' documentary and, of course, the original movie are great ways to look at it. And I'm sorry, I don't have a cleaner picture, but it is JFK Revisited through the looking glass. And it's right now it's running on Showtime. If you got a couple more minutes, Kurt, I wouldn't mind, talking, like you said, so tell me about the whole Minority Report experience in Spielberg. What was that like?
Oh, if I didn't have that special feature I talked about in a few pictures, I still can't believe it happened. It was just one of those weird things. I was working at a motion graphics company, did a lot of title sequences and stuff. We did Donnie Brasco and a couple of movies like that. And
great movie, another great movie.
Oh yeah. I did that whole opening bit with the still photos and all that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's awesome, man.
That was like my first job. We got invited to kind of help figure out, pitch on what these, Spielberg wanted these like, very organic, the most organic version of a dream of a live feed coming out of somebody's brain. So my partner and I at the time, we sort of made a bunch of short films and we pitched those, and we got the job in the room, and it was just like, what, really? And so we wound up getting our own sort of, we called our murder unit, where we just like, anytime there was in the movie when there's one of these sequences, we would either be filming it ourselves or we'd be working with the first unit. The movie opens with one of those sequences, the sort of the opening murder of the movie. And then it sort of, I think the first draft literally described Tom Cruise's character using a mouse and how he sort of separated all the footage to kind of analyze it to find clues as to what was happening. I think someone was just like, it's the year 2050. I think they're not going to be using a mouse in that point in time. And they had a science advisor who sort of put forth this idea of gestural interface. And he has since gone on actually to build one of those things. But when we got involved here, we were like, okay, that sounds cool, but like, what does that actually mean? So we did all these sort of previs of like what these gestures could be. And we always thought like Tom Cruise's character was almost like a film editor. He's going through footage.
Oh, absolutely.
He's like an orchestra conductor, and he's like moving stuff around, all that kind of stuff. And so we kind of helped figure out what that gestural interface would look like, what it looks like to zoom in on stuff, and, what it means to swipe. And that was before swipe was a word, I guess. And then the funny part was we made a little mock-up of all that. And up until this point of shooting the movie, we were off doing our little murder sequences, but it came to the point where, okay, we're going to now shoot the scene we've all been talking about where Tom Cruise is going to be going through all this kind of stuff. And they do a take or two. And I remember going up to Steven Spielberg and going, hey, if you like that moment in the mock-up where he's doing that thing with his hand to zoom in, don't forget to do that. And he just goes, "Oh, go tell Tom." I was like, "What?" I'm like early 20s, like, "Mr. Cruise, we'd really like you to kind of do this with your hand and all this kind of stuff." But one quick story about Tom Cruise, he's performing that whole scene in front of a blank glass canvas.
Okay.
And they were doing rewrites. So they were updating the script for him. They were doing the scene blocking, which was like, okay, make sure you stand here where Colin Farrell comes in and make sure you turn and do all this kind of stuff. So there's already new lines he has to know. And then he has to learn his body placement. And then we add this third layer of like, remember where all these little images are going to be. And we're like, oh, and make sure you turn your hands like this micro minutia stuff. And I'm like, good luck with all that, And he disappears for 5 minutes, comes back. Spielberg does the whole take in one, and he nails every single thing, every new line, every, blocking thing, and then every hand gesture. And I'm just like, am I the only one that's witnessing this? This is like a feat of superhuman ingenuity. How the fuck did he remember all that? Like it was almost like a circus trick. I couldn't believe what I was looking at. So that was like, I guess that's why you get paid the big bucks. It's just like the sponge type thing to kind of remember all the stuff. So yeah, we filmed a lot in DC as well too. It's funny. There's a scene that didn't make it in the movie where there was this sort of like this sort of film about pre-crime. I don't know if you recall, Pre-Crime was the name of the institution where they were trying to get this bill passed where they could make it nationwide, and they asked me if I could film all these little sequences that would be part of this sort of fake documentary. Well, that entailed taking Max von Sydow, who is the character that like started all this stuff, running around Washington, D.C. with a unit, recreating scenes from 3 Days of the Condor. Like it was like,
oh, that's great. Joe Bear, of course.
Yeah. I'm like running around with this crew, like with Max von Sydow doing all these fake little pieces for this documentary. A lot of my work got into that movie, but I was like, oh, I wish the Max von Sydow shit stayed because that was fun to make, So
yeah, how was he to work with and stuff? I love that guy. Oh, what a great actor.
It was really funny because Spielberg knew I was going to go do these things, and his assistant goes, "Oh, Steve wants to talk to him." Like, yeah, he goes, "Don't tell him how to act. Like whatever you do, don't tell Max von Sydow how to act." And I was like, okay, yeah. So basically every little thing I needed him to do, I learned to like talk about the scenario, and he did like again, much like Tom's, like every little beat he hit, and here's a guy that has done everything. Like the Minority Report thing was done in Flash Gordon, where they're like pulling all the things out of Flash's mind. They're trying to reprogram him. So here's a guy who's been there, done there for everything, but his enthusiasm just to be there and like working was like infectious. I was like, wow, isn't this shit old hat to you at this point? It's like, no, he's like really excited to run around. He's like, so how does this pre-crime thing work? Okay, you could see the things, it's like, it was quite something. So that was
my God, I like you said, 3 Days of the Condor. If I had the artistic ability to make a comic book, I would do a European hitman based on von Sydow's character in Condor, Joe Bear.
Oh yeah,
just that look, his
stoic
demeanor, that hat, those glasses, and just it is so 70s European, and just a guy that could easily, you believe, could slip into the crowd, do his business, and walk away without anyone realizing. And just the cold calculation, as he even says, you appreciate the precision of the act and everything. I mean, he's so fucking perfect. And then in the 80s, I love him in the Bob and Doug McKenzie movie, Strange Brew, and he's the comic bad guy there. Yeah. And then, Minority Report. I want to, before I forget, because I don't know if you're aware, if you've ever seen this on the Word Balloon video show, but I think your precog stuff inspired this promo template that I use for Word Balloon. Let's watch.
Okay. That looks very familiar.
Yeah, sorry.
It's okay. It's okay.
Don't
Yeah,
blame me. Don't blame me.
No, it was it sort of set the tone there.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, man. I'm sure some. Yeah,
Okay. That's quite
that's
okay,
like
man.
somebody. Hey, I think you sampled my song, man.
Oh my goodness. Hey, it's speaking of movies, it's screener season, and us union guys, have you seen anything you've liked so far? Or
No, I haven't received any screeners yet. The SAG people get it last. And
oh,
unfortunately, I got to put my membership on hold because I didn't earn any SAG money this year, so I'm not getting insurance through SAG. I had to go through Obamacare. I mean, it's hey man, I know a lot of our friends are dealing with that very situation and everything. So,
yeah.
it sucks. But yeah, I'm like, all right, I'll pay my dues for one more half year so that I can get my last batch of screeners. What have you gotten so far?
I've gotten all the hits. Yeah, I got Dune, we got the House of Gucci, the Power of the Dog. Again, a lot of the stuff they still haven't like realize that we can just watch this stuff. As Richard said, pay up.
Oh yeah.
All the stuff that's on Netflix and Amazon. It's like, guys, just we all have subscriptions. Please stop making these discs and stuff. But
don't you think, Kurt, eventually they are going to stop generating DVDs and they're just going to give us screener links? Because I expected that the last couple of years.
Yeah, they're starting to do that. Like,
yeah,
they kind of sent a couple ones through the screener passport, but I'm still getting this tall stack, and it's worse in the Emmy season because you get these like box sets of like shows, and like that's not how it works anymore, guys. Like, you can't just give us 3 random episodes of Succession and go like, oh yeah, that was some good directing and stuff. But
you're right.
I really liked Dune. I liked Zola too. I don't know if you get the screener for Zola. That's this weird, like, as a guy who loves 1970s movies, it's very much a 1970s movie, even though it's based on a Twitter feed. It's the first movie to be adapted from a Twitter feed that this girl put on, and
okay.
It's shot in super 16 millimeters, so it has this nice great thing. And it just felt very much like a Scorsese film or something from 72 or 73, just real like slice of life, gritty reality kind of thing, which I really dug. But yeah, did you watch Dune yet? I forget. I don't think
I have to embarrass myself and say I have not watched Dune, and I think I missed my HBO Max window.
Oh yeah, that window's closing up. That's closing up.
So yeah, I got to be honest. I'm hearing good things about Dune. I really do love the Lynch one from the 80s. Yeah, I don't know. And also, here's another weird thing, Kurt, because obviously, the theater thing and the concerns about Omicron and the Delta variant and COVID and everything. I am getting more comfortable watching movies at home.
Yeah.
And even with, in fact, as Spider-Man No Way Home, or rather whatever it's called now, the new one.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's out now and stuff. And I'm not like rushing to go see it or whatever. I didn't rush to see Black Widow. I didn't rush to see Shang-Chi. I was content watching him on Disney and stuff. I don't know. And again, I'm a little older, and I know that theaters have been gearing more towards younger audiences, certainly even as I was a younger person as well. I mean, the last 30 years, really. But it's gonna be really interesting to see how the theater system is able to eventually come back. Yeah. I really think they're in a quandary, and also the studios. I mean, my God, they're just shitting money, and I don't know how they're going to survive in their current incarnations. I mean, obviously, being a part of Disney, being a part of Warner's conglomerate and stuff, and Comcast having Universal, or Xfinity having Universal and stuff. Those things will survive, but I don't know. It's a weird. I mean, I'll be honest. Paramount. Paramount can't seem to get out of its own way. Let's leave it. I mean, people are sick of me complaining about Discovery every week, but
I before we go, I just want to say I thoroughly enjoyed Trek Watch, because I don't know if I get pleasure out of hearing your pain or whatever it is, but like, it's just good to know there's a man out there who loves a franchise so much that he's going to keep trying. And like, this new Trek is baked. It's not changing. And you're like a boxer who's like, I'm going to go into this ring and I'm going to lose. I'm going to lose because they're not changing the show and I'm going to get knocked out, but I'm going to go back the next day and try again. And it's very charming to hear you like, I'm trying, guys. I'm trying real hard, like the show. And it's
truly.
And I gave up very early on in Discovery. And so once in a while, I'll kind of like hear something or someone will say something on Discovery. I'm like, I wonder, maybe I ought to go back. And then I hear one of your episodes. I'm like, I'm good. I'm going to leave it at that. I will say this. I am friends with this guy, Henry Myers, who is one of the 2 showrunners who's going to be doing Strange New Worlds.
Okay.
It's him and Akiva Goldsman. I can't, vouch for the man who wrote the Joel Schumacher Batman movies, but my friend Henry, he's one of us. So
that's good.
I'm thinking in his hands, and if he can, navigate the politics, Strange New Worlds is going to be very, 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 very good. I mean, this is a guy I'm a terrible friend. I didn't see, he worked on the Magicians, the sci-fi show.
Yeah.
Apparently it's based on a book and it was very, very authentic to it. Like it was.
Oh, that's good to hear.
Terms about like respecting source material, like, oh, that's music to our ears and stuff. But it's funny. One thing I wanted to tell you too, my friend Angela, her mom grew up here in Los Angeles and she was, one of the first wave of Trek fans to start the letter writing campaign.
Oh, wow.
And so she's like one of these original, like, put this thing back. Like she had got all her friends to do. She organized these letter writing campaigns. And I asked her, I asked Angela, what does she think of new Trek? Is this woman who was there from day one and made sure that the 3rd season was good. And she loves it. I'm like, what?
Great.
I said, but she goes, I said, but it doesn't, this doesn't, she goes, oh, she just pretends it's not canon. Like it can't be. I'm like, but it's supposed to be canon. And she's like, no. So I think if you blissfully just sort of shut off the part of you that even though they're trying to tell us it's canon, much like Angela Marie's mom, who wrote the first wave of letters, like, no, it's not canon. It's
it's everyone says it's head canon, and you make those decisions. Oh, there you go. Wayne says you should check out Star Trek Prodigy. Well, as you know, our friends, the Bensons, are some of the writers. And truly, man, and I'll even say this because I love Prodigy.
Yeah.
I honestly do love Prodigy. And I told Julie and Shauna, they, as you know, but in case the listeners don't know, they wrote the second part of the 2-parter. So episodes 4 and 5 was a 2-part story.
Yeah.
I honestly think that is the best representation of Star Trek, of new Star Trek, that does call back to the original series. I think the premise of the 2-parter is a classic original series kind of problem. And also, this show stays true to what they said it was going to be. Yeah. These kids aren't Starfleet.
Yeah.
And that's fine. They are members of various alien races in the Star Trek universe, and that's fine. They are learning about Starfleet through the Janeway hologram, and they're going to make mistakes, and also they're not going to know things. So that's great. It is staying true to its premise. Like you said, Discovery's like, oh no, it's canon. It's like, well, you're having fun with canon. The other thing was, and I mean, as you said, and it's the God's honest truth, and I say it every time. Every week, I'm like, well, maybe I'll like this one a little bit better. And I will.
We're all listening. We're like, he's not going to like it. He's gonna get punched out again. But
I am your worst like knockout opponent, just waiting to get punched again. There's no question. But I will say that truly, even the last 2 episodes, they're trying to be a little more like Star Trek. Michael Burnham is not the solution to every problem presented in every episode. A couple of the other cast members are getting opportunities to kind of solve problems.
Okay.
So there you go.
I don't know if I'm still going to watch it, but I'll take your word for it. I was, this was kind of interesting. Like the whole growing up, we never had the ratings like the TVMA, like, depictions of smoking and street violence, whatever. I started rewatching The Next Generation. And I don't know if you've watched it on Netflix recently.
Oh, yeah.
But every episode comes up TVMA, and then below it says fear and sex. And I was just like, wow, like I didn't remember Next Generation being that racy, but like, oh yes, it's TVMA because there's depictions of fear and sex. So be careful, kids who need your safe place and have stolen your parents' Netflix account. You might get offended by the depictions of fear and sex. And like I was just like, what the fuck is this?
You made allusions to Let It Be earlier in the conversation as well. And I don't know why we're getting an echo right now. But the at the beginning of the documentary, they warn everyone that people are going to be smoking, and I'm like, really? Okay.
Yeah. Off camera, there was some heroin use too, but it's fine. Like where do you draw the line at that point? So
hilarious.
It is strange. And yeah, Disney Plus does that with the Muppets where they're like, hey, just want you to know there's Johnny Cash is going to be singing in front of the Confederate flag. But to their credit, they're like, we're not going to
I didn't know that.
Oh yeah. There's
oh, there you go. That's a little I can appreciate that.
Well, but they kept it in, like they didn't cut it out because like the show was good, but they're like, just so you know, it's the South lost. And
I don't know how to break it to you exactly.
Yeah.
No, also, God, I remember when. Well, first of all, when the Looney Tunes, the Warner Brother cartoons came out on DVD, they had disclaimers and stuff. But also Sesame Street, and Cookie Monster promotes obesity.
Oh yeah.
It's like,
oh, dude, there's a really good. Just came out on Monday. It's called Street Gang. How we get to Sesame Street. And it's all about the origins. And I think they've treaded this on a couple other documentaries, but I never knew like how Jim Henson got involved and how all this stuff came to be. And it's fascinating. And it's going to make you relive the death of Mr. Hooper, which I was like, I'm weeping hysterically on my couch. But it was just like, what a wonderful collision of like educators and comedy writers and puppeteers, just kind of like, hey, I got an idea. Let's make stuff that doesn't suck for the kids, where they can learn stuff, but like have fun along the way. And like just seeing that evolution and like, the ideas of like, we want this to be the inner city. We want the set to look like the inner city. That's who we're going to appeal to. And like, it's Street Gang, How We Got to Sesame Street. Really, really, really interesting.
And where's that running?
It's on HBO Max.
Oh, I'm going to have to watch it. Yeah, of course. Cause that's,
much like that Paul McCartney 3-2-1, like just appeared one day on Hulu. Like, what the fuck did this come from? Like these things just keep popping up out of nowhere. And Street Gang's one of the other thing. What's funny about it is they'll play dailies of like some of like the Bert and Ernie scenes, and Jim Henson and Frank Oz stay in character when they ruin a take. So you're watching this sort of like these outtakes of like our favorite puppets, like, talking shit in between the lines and stuff. So it was kind of neat seeing that kind of stuff. So it was like fake bloopers and stuff. So,
that's awesome. Oh, I don't know what happened there.
That's Open the damn door, Ernie. Like it's like that kind of stuff. So yeah, it's pretty funny.
Hey man, I was 4 when Sesame Street premiered.
Yeah,
I am an original Sesame Street watcher, and man, thank God my father is like, you're going to watch this and you're going to learn how to read. And I'm like, all right. And I did. And I mean, really, I was always a grade ahead up until like 5th grade with my elementary school, where they'd put me with advanced reading. Cause it's like, no, he can read. Which was great. Of course, I was still a shitty student. I still got lousy grades.
But think of how much worse you'd be without it. That's the thing. That's the thing. No, it's good stuff.
But no, that's awesome. I got all right, Street Gang. Yeah, that's funny because I was watching a clip that was on YouTube of the Muppets, and it was a Sesame Street clip, and it did say Street Gang, and I didn't make the connection. Yeah, so that's great to learn. That's fantastic.
Yeah, and a lot of the, except for Henson, like a lot of the surviving original writers and stuff are still around, so they're interviewing them and stuff, and it's really it's really good stuff. So check that out. And I forgot to mention, all during working on JFK, the thing that kind of the levity I had, I was reading James Tinian's the Department of Truth.
That's great.
I was like, okay, when things get a little too crazy, I'm gonna go kind of read the more entertaining sort of version of all this kind of stuff. So that got me through it. So
That's awesome, man. No,
that
that's
was
great. And
helpful.
that's lovely that you're giving James the plug and everything.
Oh,
That's a
dude,
fun book.
that book's fantastic. And like the first issue alone, I was like, oh man, okay, here we go. I'm gonna be stuck in this rabbit hole for a while, I guess.
I am very happy for James. I'm very happy for all these other men and women that are getting Substack money and pursuing their creator-owned comics. Yeah, it's very very interesting, and also DC and Marvel I think are putting out good stuff too.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting how the generational shift happens sometimes, and people, for a lack of a better word, graduate from doing stuff from the big two and then can focus on their creator own stuff.
Yeah.
And then that allows new people to step in and work at DC and Marvel and get their shot to tell interesting stories. And I'm pleased to say, I think it's really working out well for both types of creators right now.
Yeah, there's like this weird system that's happening now. It's like, okay, you get onto this thing, and now there's room for you, and then I'm gonna go do that, and yeah, no, and I've bought many of things listening to your guests, you know, from Brubecker's things to, you know, I actually I did finally read Human Target #1 after you had Tom King on recently, and yeah, it's really good. And like, I love DOA the movie too, so I was like, it was nice to kind of see the sort of DNA of that kind of filtered through there. So I'm excited to pick
Absolutely.
up yeah,
Oh, no,
but like his stuff is like, I always want to wait for the trades because like, you know, Tom, I can't remember between month to month all this complexities of these things. But and I always go, okay, if the new one comes, I'm going to wait for the trade. But then now I wind up buying the single issue, and then you know it's all goes downhill from there. So
absolutely, Wayne says he's right. The Kirkman Manifesto is working.
The Kirkman Manifesto is working. Yes, sir.
Very true. Back in who knew? Back in 2009, Robert was on it, and it's come true. Absolutely, man. Very cool. Kurt, I mean, obviously we can continue, but I don't want to keep you if you got other things to do. You know, it's a Friday night.
It's a Friday night. You know how my social life is going? I guess you could tell right about now. I'm good, man. I got nothing going on. It's Friday night. I meant to ask you before we go.
Please.
So you got into VR. You started doing like headset stuff and what? Yeah, let's see that thing.
I got my Oculus right here.
Oh my goodness.
Fantastic. I treated myself for my birthday. I had to.
That's good. I directed a couple of VR things. Richard, who was on the chat earlier.
Yeah.
We worked on a How to Train Your Dragon virtual reality experience. And it was whole thing where you went into the hidden world from the third movie and you get to like pet some of the baby dragons. And like, you know, it really, you kind of rode them back and forth through a thing. And like, what was really interesting as a director dealing with virtual reality, you get these sort of feedback from the audience. And usually it's like, hey, I didn't quite follow the narrative here. The characters weren't quite developed here. It's a little slow at this part. It was weird to get feedback that was, it made me sick. I almost threw up at that one point because the dragon took a dive too quickly. So it's like this weird sort of like fourth dimension of like visceral physicality that gets worked in that you don't consider. And you have to kind of like map out make sure, okay, we don't want people to vomit when they make this turn here, guys, you know? So it was like, and Richard wrote the whole thing. And so that's why, you know, it's the good stuff. That's
awesome. That's amazing. Yeah. I've only gotten a few things. You know, it's driving me nuts. I have this Oculus Vision Quest. They offer Star Trek Bridge Crew, which I did play. I did try to play briefly on my PC, and it was okay. But I really was looking forward to doing it on Oculus. I can't get the goddamn thing to load properly. It's driving me crazy. And I haven't done the Star Wars game yet, the Vader game. Yeah. But I know that's supposed to be really good. But no, the games I had back to boxing. I got the Creed demo.
Oh, nice.
I beat the hell out of me, and there you go. That was fun. Yeah, and I'll get the other boxing games and stuff. No, those are fun. Cool. No, I'm enjoying it. I think it's a blast.
Oh, that's good because we were kind of worried about what the future of VR was going to be because it sort of seemed like to die. But now with the metaverse and all this kind of stuff, it seems to be making its third comeback. So you know, we'll see.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
cool, man. No, it's interesting, and I'm just kind of taking my time and trying to pick some fun games. I did pick a really fun space game called Off Space, and you get to fly a spaceship and shoot at things and everything. And I'm like, all right, that's cool. You know, I'm content. So
I'll tell you off the air the secret VR project we were working on that
Ooh.
died before COVID and then all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
All right, and I'll tell you a secret documentary project that I'm working
Oh
on.
boy! Secret,
about that?
a little epilogue, a little secret epilogue
Absolutely,
here on
man.
Word Balloon.
So yeah, no, we got to share industry secrets, absolutely.
Okay.
But in the meantime, cannot recommend enough. Again, JFK Revisited, Through the Looking Glass, currently running on Showtime, streaming in February on other platforms, and of course, then you're going to get the 4-hour version. So if you really are a true crime person, you really got to get to the bottom of this. And of course, Stuntman.
Hey,
Disney Plus, it's still there, and it's right. Is it? It's still running. I mean, is
yeah.
it?
It's
Do they
there
own
forever.
it?
It's
Okay.
there forever.
Okay, because sometimes the a streamer will get a movie or whatever for a while, and then it goes.
Well, they bought it. It's theirs. They said they're going to keep it forever. And it's funny. I was watching Hawkeye the other night, and like it says, oh, since you like Hawkeye, you might want to watch Stuntman. I'm like, oh, whoa, fuck, that's weird. That's my film. Okay, So yeah, it's there forever. So that's the thing for filmmakers today. It's like we make these things. We don't have to worry about it not coming down from the marquee. It's like 20 years from now, someone might discover it and go, hey, that was really good. I like that,
It's such a great movie, and really, I mean, a good counterbalance to the sadness of JFK Revisited. But it's great. It's a great story. And man, again, sadly old enough to remember Evel Knievel's first attempt. So it's pretty cool that Eddie got to do it right and everything. And
finish the mission.
Absolutely, man. Very cool. Kurt, as always, truly, I can't thank you enough for coming on. It's always fun. You're incredibly kind with your praise, but let me give it back to you in terms of I'm always thrilled when you got something new. So seriously, whatever is new, let's plan on having you come back and talk more about it.
That'd be awesome. I have 2 things I can't talk about, and another one that might be finished sooner than later, and I'll let you know. Maybe there's some comic book related things to it, so it won't be a complete divergent.
Excellent.
Right. So
that's wonderful to hear. And everybody, I think Sunday night we're going to do an Christmas show with Art and Franco and Skokie Spidey and Scoot and I, and we'll be bringing you some merriment for the holiday season. That's the plan for Sunday. And also the latest Trek Watch. I was going to do it today with Mitch, and I got screwed up with my schedule. So we will do it on Sunday, and I'll be yelling at clouds about episode 5.
The best.
So join us then. Until then, everybody stay safe, stay happy.